Welcome to They Mostly Pottered at Night. Mostly, I am Salem, joined by my co-host Graveyard.
Hello.
This is episode 97 of our weekly All Things Horror podcast. This week we are revisiting one of our favorite classic movie monsters, the vampire. The vampire has had a multitude of adaptations and reimaginings, but these films aren't breaking any new ground there. These films are asking the questions of why don't vampires just do this? So here are some interesting tales that ask those hollow questions and give not very good answers, I would say.
Yes, I'd say the one in the middle, the least, but
but we'll see. So this week we're doing 30 Days of Night. It's direct to video sequel, 30 Days of Night Dark Days. And then the brand new movie that just came out this year, not too long ago, Abigail.
yes.
So we will start off with 30 Days of Night, which came out in 2007.
Yep.
Starring Josh Hartnett and some other people. I don't really know anybody else that's
Boone Jr. Don't forget him.
Oh yeah, Mark Boone Jr. Sorry, that's about it. That's the only person I really know.
And the wife in the Amityville Horror with Ryan Reynolds. She plays the wife.
Sure. So essentially, 30 Days of Night is Josh Hartnett plays a sheriff of an Alaskan town that's the farthest north town in Alaska. One of the classic places that, like the title infers, has 30 days of night. So the sun goes down and does not come back up for 30 whole days. So essentially the setup to this is that vampires go, hey, that means the sun doesn't come up for 30 days. Let's just go there and kill some people. So essentially that's what they do. So we got the sheriff, which is Josh Hartnett, who's I guess deputy partner, who's in the beginning and then at the end and then nowhere in between. We get his ex-wife, who apparently had moved away. And she's like a fire marshal. She's in town doing fire marshal things, and she put everything off to the last minute. And she misses her plane because she gets in a car accident on the way out of town, and oh, wouldn't you know it, she's trapped in the town. Because apparently everything shuts down for the 30 Days of Night. I don't know if they've never seen night before the 30 days is up. I don't know why the entire town would shut down. I don't. Those questions are not answered or even asked. But anyway, we get a couple of scenes in the beginning where we see a lot of the cell phones, not all of them, a lot of the cell phones from the town were brought to a random point and burned. We get all the dogs in the town were murdered.
Oh, all the good boys.
Yeah, all the dogs in the town were murdered. So the internet goes down, the phones go down, and then last but not least, the power goes out. So essentially, everybody's just kind of like, hunkering down, like, hey, what's going on? We don't know, we're going to go around and try to figure it out, So they go out to like the guy that runs the cell phone tower, and he's been murdered and his head is like on a spike out in front of the little trailer next to the cell phone tower. So like, okay, this is like murderous stuff is happening. Go back to the town, and the town is just gone crazy. There's vampire monster things hissing and screeching and jumping and just murdering people in the streets. And they essentially people try to run and hide, and they're just failing. Maybe we literally get like an overhead view of just all the carnage that's happening in the town. So, Josh Hartnett tries to go back to his, police station to get his brother and his grandmother. And there's the creepy guy who walks into town. We don't really get any background of him. We see him look back, and he sees like an oil tanker, which appears to be abandoned.
Mm-hmm.
and then he just walks into town, goes to the diner, and asks for a bowl of raw hamburger, and then like starts threatening the waitress, so he gets
Well,
arrested.
fresh raw hamburger in the northern part of Alaska. It's not gonna be fresh.
Well, it doesn't matter if it's fresh or not. I mean, it's not gonna happen. So anyway, he gets arrested, for assaulting the waitress, and he gets locked up. He's kind of teasing them that like, oh, they're coming, they're gonna come for me, and they're gonna kill all of you, blah blah, whatever. A weird assault. He tries to assault his brother. He shoots him in the arm, and then handcuffs him to the wall because everything's going crazy, and they can't call out. There's no internet. There's nothing to do, so they just gotta leave him there. Grandma gets murdered because he goes off to do something, comes back. Grandma's murdered. They left the guy handcuffed to the jail cell, and he's all upset that they left him. And so he like starts crying. They left me. Please kill me. And they just leave him. So anyway, so they all team up. So it's Josh Hartnett, his ex-wife, his little brother, like the big, scary trapper guy of the town, Mark Boone Jr., some guy and his dad who has Alzheimer's, the waitress lady. I don't know, I think some other people. I don't I don't remember. Anyway, so they all like they're hiding in the diner and they're like, well, where can we go? What can we do? Like we have to wait out these whole 30 days. There's no getting out until then because the nearest place is 80 miles away. And they're like, well, we can get to this like I guess I don't know, garbage disposal site. I don't know. They don't explain what it is.
Oh, that 24-hour, 7 days a week garbage disposal.
Right? Yeah, I don't know what that is, but it's made of metal, and they say they can hide there. Okay, but they're like, "Oh, that's on the edge of town. We can't make it there." Okay, so where can we go? And one lady goes, "Oh, why don't we hide in this guy's attic? It's really hard to find the attic stairs, so we'll just do that." So they go there, and it's very hard to see it. It's like one little knob in the ceiling, and it's like hidden in the moldings of the ceiling, so you can't really see it. So they hide up there. We essentially see them hiding up there for like 2 weeks.
Oh yeah, that's good. Like 14 to 17 days or something like that.
Yeah, they're up there for a long time, and every once in a while they hear screaming, and the vampires murder somebody in the distance. But for the most part, like the whole town is just gone.
Yeah, I think we get context. There's about 100 people left in the town that were there.
Left? I don't think there's 100 people left.
I mean, that didn't leave for the season.
Oh, well, the sign said like 132.
Okay.
Because remember, there was the traditional thing. They put the sign and it said 132. At the end of the movie, we find out that 98 people died. Or no, I think they say that in the second movie.
Yeah.
I don't think they say how many actually died in the first, but in the second one they say 98 people died. Who knows if that's accurate? It's the second movie. But anyway, a lot of people died. Anyway, so they're up there for like 2 weeks. It gets to the point where they're like, we have to try to do something. We're going to wait till the next blizzard to where there's a whiteout and it's cover, and so we can make it to this metal building at the edge of town.
Because they know cold.
Right. Just like it's been 2 weeks. I mean, again, this whole scenario I don't understand. Like, okay, the vampires get there, they murder the shit out of everybody immediately. Right? We might have a couple stragglers here and there, but like 2 weeks later, what the fuck are they doing?
Yeah.
There's nothing left to eat.
Move on.
Right. And anything that's like, not already dead is frozen. Like, I don't understand why they would still be there, but whatever. That question is not asked or answered. So we move on. So essentially, we get one of the guys, the Alzheimer dad has an Alzheimer's, I don't know, what do you call those?
We'll call it a senior moment.
Yeah, it's a senior moment where he freaks out. He runs outside. The dude that's the son runs outside yelling and screaming, running down the middle of the street. So of course he's caught and murdered. I guess we don't ever see what happens to Alzheimer's dad, but I'm pretty sure he's dead too.
He just runs off. He runs off of the movie.
Yeah, he's gone. So at that point they kind of like get upset by that, but also they get a blizzard happening around that same time. So they go to the general store to get supplies. And they're all grabbing Oreos.
I
um,
promise her I wouldn't survive on these.
right. Good plan, dude.
Yep.
And then somehow I don't. I guess a little girl vampire was eating a person for 2 weeks in the
Mhm.
general store, as you do, I guess. So they have like this fight with this little girl vampire, to where Josh Hartnett's little brother has to chop its head off with an axe. Um, I guess this is where they find out that if you chop their head off, they die, right?
Yeah.
So everything else they were doing before then was having little to no effect. So at that point, then they try to, like make it out of town. They make it to the police station, but that's as far as they get. So they're whittled down to, I think, what, 6 at this point. But
Yeah.
we find out that the one guy ended up getting bit by the little girl, so they're down to 5 because Josh Hartnett kills him because he asks him to, because he's becoming a vampire.
Yep.
So then they're down to 5. So then Josh Hartnett basically goes, okay, I'm going to make it a distraction and you guys run for the building. So they all run for the big metal building. Josh Hartnett makes it there. The other 2 people make it there, but his ex-wife and this little girl that was like bait that she saved didn't make it. So I guess I forgot about the scene where he refines his partner that was from the beginning of the movie that now shows up towards the end. He had been hiding out in his own home. He had murdered his wife and children because he didn't want them to get killed by vampires, but somehow they never went in his house.
Correct.
I don't.
They didn't go into 2 houses.
I'm just saying, like, there's like dead food there. Like, why wouldn't I don't whatever. So he's like all depressed and like, upset, whatever. He ends up getting bit, and then they kill him again by chopping his head off. But the wife and the little girl are trapped underneath a truck. They're slowly freezing to death. The vampires decide at this point, oh, I guess we'll just burn the town down because then it'll look like everybody just died in a big oil fire because there's an oil pipeline right nearby. So it'll be this oil pipeline accident, and then everybody will die, and then nobody will ever know what happened. So Josh Hartnett decides, oh well, I'm going to save them by injecting myself with vampire blood and becoming a vampire, and then fighting the lead vampire to make a distraction so that the ex-wife and the girl can get away. He fights the head vampire. I mean, the ex-wife and the little girl do get away, get back into that middle building, and then he kills the head vampire, and then all the other vampires just kind of stand down and leave. And then he cuddles up with his ex-wife, and they watch the sunrise, and then he burns to death in the sun.
Yes.
Movie over.
Yeah. So what were your first thoughts on the rewatches? I know you've seen this before.
Yeah. I mean, my thoughts always go to. I've read the comic. I read the comic before the movie came out, and I don't understand. Okay, I get. Well, I'll just come out with it. The comic is similar. Obviously, it's the same premise, right? There is 30 days a night, a bunch of vampires go up there, decide to kill people where the sun's not coming up, and they cut them off, so it's just a hunting ground, right? But in the comic, the vampires talk. The vampires are regular people that like discuss things, and this was like a plan that they had, and it was like the younger kind of idiot vampires that had this stupid plan, and the elder vampires, told them, no, this is a dumb fucking plan, don't do that, and they did it anyway. And so the way that it ends in the comic is that the young buck vampires get killed because the elder vampires send a like vampire hunter there to kill them all. And at the end, the elders themselves show up to kill everybody that's left. And I mean, it does end the same way in that the sheriff character does get burned like that. He does make himself a vampire, does a last stand kind of thing. That does happen. But there's like so much more politics going on between the different vampires. Again, like in this film, the vampires just hiss and make weird screeching noises. They like communicate with each other and like I don't know what kind of weird language is that, vampire language.
It's like
yeah, it's again I don't know if they're like trying to make fun of Eastern European language or so. I don't know what they're doing, but they're like speaking vampire and they like don't speak English. Like the only vampire that speaks English is the little girl in the general store.
It seems to be the newly turned vampires that can only speak English.
Right. But it's like, okay, so like these guys have been around for centuries and you're telling me they never learned to speak English? I mean, that's fine, but like they're in America, like planning a heist. Like you'd think you'd learn the language if you're doing this. Again, it's not like, it's like, what's the hardest thing about learning a new language? It's just time, right? What does vampire have a shit ton of?
All
right?
the time.
Right. It's like you live forever. You have plenty of time to learn new languages and shit. Like, what the fuck? I don't know. Again, it's just that there's so much missing, so much more like politics and things that made it interesting because like I said in the title, like there's questions like why don't vampires just go to where the sun doesn't rise, right? That way they don't have to worry about the sun. It's like, this is why there's not many people up there and it's hard to hide murders and drained people up there.
Right.
If it happens like once every decade, that's not a big deal, but if it happens like once a week, like something's gonna get found out.
Yeah.
And the elders know that, like, we have to keep hidden from people because if the people ever understand that we are real, they will kill us all. Like, we'll have a war and it'll be great for a minute and then we'll all die because, we have one huge weakness in that, we can't be in the sun.
Right.
So as soon as they learn to, that we are real and that is our weakness, like we're done. We're over with. There's nothing we can do. And again, they made the vampires just animals, like basically like low functioning human, like barely able to, speak. And they make the vampires intentionally look inhuman. And like, as most of them don't speak at all. Like there's only two that speak, and that's the leader guy who speaks his vampire language. I think he speaks like 2 words of English, and then the little girl in the store, and that's it.
Right. Yeah, I mean, you read the comics. When I saw this, I'm pretty sure I saw this in theaters the first time. I thought it was an interesting concept for a vampire movie, in 2007. I read, I think just the first couple episodes, I may have gotten like the first omnibus of the first, 30 Days of Night. And yeah, the differences are huge between them, obviously. But it's it's a easily turn off your brain and watch vampire movie versus I say the comic that is a interesting tale of politics and survivability.
Right. I mean, it's hard. Well, it was hard for me to turn off and just see it for what it is because I had already read the comics by the time I saw the movie.
Mm-hmm.
So it was, I wish I could have seen it without reading the comics first to just see it as a standalone. But I had already read it before then. It's hard not to. I mean, I guess by itself, it's okay. It's like, I would say like slightly above average just on its own merit. Right.
Right. Yeah.
But knowing what it should have been, or I guess could have been, makes it that much worse in my eyes.
Right.
All right. So, do you want to do your high points, or do you want me to go first?
I'll go first. Right. I think the special effects on this were pretty decent for this movie. We'll discuss the special effects of the second one. It won't be in the highlights. I can, spoiler there. The second one. Like I said, I think it looked great. I think the blood effects were good. I think, every piece of it was decent looking for probably, I'd say a smaller budget horror movie. I don't remember exactly how much. I think it only like recouped its production cost at best.
Well, probably a little bit over because it got a sequel, but it was a direct-to-video
Mm,
sequel, so not a lot. Yeah.
right. I think what really drew me to it, and I'll guess I'll throw this into a highlight, is this is Ghost House Pictures, Sam Raimi's horror production company that he hit recently started. So, it being vampires and gory and Ghost House Pictures, like I said, when I originally saw it was a thing for me just because I'm like, all right, I started following, production companies for horror movies like Dark Castle and then Ghost House. I think the set design of Arrow is like small town Alaska. It really feels like it. You feel like it's just like, hey, this is where everybody knows everyone, and just really how everything is really close together. Um, so you can see and kind of feel like the isolation and the cold and stuff like that. Because where we live, we get blizzards sometimes, and it feels like we're isolated and can't do anything, even just for a day sometimes, or snow apocalypses that we have. Like I said, the story was a good story for what it was. If it, like I said, wasn't compared to the comics, it was a decent story. It was intriguing, and we get into some of the tropes of as we see in all these movies, the main hero becoming basically a vampire at some point in time, or somebody turning purposefully into a vampire. And let's face it, Mark Boone Jr. Chainsaw Caterpillar. I absolutely love that scene. Like, he took out what, a dozen of them.
I mean, you have to be a complete idiot to be cut in half by a trenching tool.
I mean,
It
he
it
did.
it does not move like that. I mean, that's again, if you've ever seen one of those things move, it does not move like that. It's not
What
like a
you s-
fucking NASCAR that can like change direction at will.
Oh yeah, the way he was driving, it was like he was able to turn on a dime and just like have that much control over it. But I mean, they did jump into it. But I said, even those scenes, and that's why I liked it, just because of the effects that were done on it. Whether reasonable or not, no, but I still like it.
Oh.
What about you? What are your highlights?
Um, I like Josh Hartnett a lot. I think he did great in this movie. I think he did great overall. He's one of those guys that I think should really have been like a leading man, but he never really hit that leading. He's been in like the leading man in a bunch of movies, but they never really hit as hard as they should have. So he's in a lot of stuff, but he's not as big a name as he should be. I would say.
Right, kind of like once he got out of the Tina Heartthrob stage, his roles kind of went away.
Well, I mean, he does a lot of cool roles, and just none of them are big.
Cool.
So like the movies that he does star in never make it huge, so he never really gets huge roles.
The Faculty, I loved.
Right.
Yeah,
But I mean, yeah, Faculty's not huge. I mean, that's just. I mean, he's been in a lot of stuff,
right.
interesting stuff. Like I mean, like Lucky Number 11. Did you ever see that movie?
Mm-hmm.
Great movie. Didn't make it. It wasn't that big. It should have been because it was. He was awesome in it. But
Penny Dreadful.
yeah. Well, that's a show.
But yeah, but it's still like under the radar for a lot of people too.
Right. I mean, he was the hitman in Sin City.
He was.
But anyway, I thought he was great. Ben Foster was great. He wasn't in it for very long, but he plays a very, very convincing, creepy, crazy person.
Like a meth vampire.
Yeah, he was like, that guy is like, you knew something was wrong with him. Like, you can see it in his eyes. Like, again, Ben Foster, he always does pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
He's a very, I don't know if method actor is the right way to describe that, but he gets very, like, into the role, and it's good. I do like that it has a longer, like, time frame than most horror movies do.
It's almost 2 hours.
Well, I mean, like, time frame is in, like, length of time that they're there or alive.
Oh, yeah.
Like, most horror movies are, like, a couple of days.
This makes it all 30.
Right. But it's like, yeah, this is, like, 30 days, like, a lot of, like, hiding and running and and stuff like that. It's a lot way longer timeline than it
Hmm.
normally is because yeah, there's nobody that comes to check on them. Again, I don't understand why everything gets shut down. I'm sure it's because like maybe the weather gets too cold or too bad during that time or something. I don't know. I'm sure there's a reason for it. They just don't really explain why. Like just being nighttime wouldn't prevent you from like driving around. I don't understand why they would be cut off.
Right.
Um. Anyway, okay. So that's it for my high points. I'll roll into my low points here. I'm gonna start with the bite and wiggle. Right. Um. The vampires, they bite and then they just wiggle their whole fucking body like they're sharks. Right now,
Hmm.
if you're a shark and you're just trying to tear meat from bone, I get it. If you're a vampire and you drink blood, if you bite and then rip and tear the flesh around it, like you are just wasting blood. It is just spraying everywhere,
Yep.
right? Blood that's all over you, all over the ground, all over the walls. You can't drink that. So they're just like biting, like tearing flesh out, blood is squirting everywhere, and then they move on to the next one. Like, what the fuck are you doing? Like, this is supposed to be your food. You're not just murdering for the point of murdering. And that's like I say, like there's only 132 people in the whole town. If they're just literally going from murder to murder to murder without drinking the blood first, right?
Yep.
132 people is not gonna last. There was like 10 vampires.
Oh, I think there's probably about 20.
I think that we
But
only ever see like 10. Like I think
but
the most we see
yeah.
is like they're standing around the circle leader at the end. There's only like 10.
Right. But I mean, pace yourself.
Well, that's what I'm
You're not
saying.
gonna,
Like there's
you
no
don't
way
need
there's
to
enough
eat.
food.
You don't need to eat 15 people the first day.
Right. But if they do, like I said, it's so cold, they're gonna be frozen.
Right.
You can't drink frozen blood. Like they're not starting any fires. You don't see them thawing anything out. They're just like somehow surviving anyway. Again, like the logistics of this don't make any sense at all.
Hmm.
Um, I mean, again, they were like every time, every time they show a vampire, they hiss and scream.
Hmm.
Every single scene, no matter what. Oh, they're on the roof hiding, screaming. Like, why are you bothering even trying to hide? You're just screaming and hissing everywhere. People know exactly where you are. Just stupid. I'll go back to the inhuman look that they have, where they like slant the eyes up, right, and like try to make the mouth look bigger. The CGI that they used on their eyes was not good. There are several scenes that when they turn their heads, you can clearly see the CGI not moving with their head. Like I think the worst one is like when the one bald vampire gets in the house that they're in. And it's because there's a lot of scenes where he looks like back and forth, back and forth. If you watch his face, you can see that CGI moving all over the place. And it is done very badly. It is a very, very trashy thing. Again, one, I don't even know why you bother. Because if vampires looked like that, there's no way they can hide. You know what I mean? They got like these crazy evil predator eyes, these the giant mouths full of super sharp teeth, these fucking fingernails that are like 4 inches long,
Yeah.
right? Like, why are you bothering even wearing clothes? You're not gonna pass as a person. You know what I don't get why they're doing that. Like vampires are supposed to, the whole thing about a vampire is you're supposed to be hidden.
Right.
You look like a person so you can mix in with the crowds. Like, yeah, daylight will kill you, but at night you just look like a regular person. They're all about seduction and like, sneaky stuff. And this, they're just like, it's all out war. Okay. But like, you guys don't look like people. Like, okay, like, I get this is your like 30 days of fun time, but like, you have to go back home at some point. Like, you're telling me you look like that at home? How the,
Sure.
how the fuck are you able to walk around a city like that? And you're biting and wiggling and blood spraying everywhere every time you feed? Like, how the fuck are you guys not caught? Just stupid. And they try to talk a little bit more about this in the second movie, and they fail miserably. But yeah, again to that point, like, okay, the blood, they bite and wiggle, and they get blood all over themselves, and they don't bother changing their clothes for 30 days. Okay, like there, have you ever had like a shirt that gets wet and you had to wear it in the cold? You know what I
Oh
mean?
yeah,
I mean, you're telling me that they're walking around like that for 30 fucking days? Oh, that's
just
disgusting.
frozen stiff
Right.
clothes. Yeah.
Frozen stiff. I mean, again, I used to work in a meat department, so I used to get blood on my clothes. If you like bloody clothes, you don't wash them the next day, they fucking reek. So like you imagine even with the frozenness, like you can imagine how bad they stunk. I don't know. Again, the whole thing, like logistically, it doesn't make any sense. Like it ugh, just disgusting. And I'll also end it on Ben Foster's teeth were gross.
Like I said, meth vampire.
Yeah, they were. Well, that's worse than meth. Meth is that's disgusting. I don't know what was. But that's all I got. What do you got for low points?
Oh, easily waste of blood. We talk about it every single time. I think we talked about it in Near Dark as well. That just like bite, you slip out some blood, then let's have the other 6 pints pump out onto everything. That's stupid. It's that only new vampires speak. Obviously, the straight from the comics for sure. Uh, you know, uh, the parkouring, I don't think is necessary.
It was like
They are
2007. I think everything was doing parkour at the time.
apparently everyone needed the parkour. For a town needing to shut down, they leave that tooth machine on the entire 30 days. So is it always running? Why is it
Well,
always running?
well, that's the thing. How does that thing have power?
Right. No other place has power.
Right.
That does.
Right. They cut down the power to the whole town. Right.
Hmm.
Okay. And then the generators kick on. Understandable. It's a town like that. You need to have generators in order to stay alive. You need
That's
to
a
stay warm.
huge beefy machine to
Right.
stay
But
running.
like, okay, generators don't run for 30 days without being refueled. You know what I mean?
Correct.
So like I would understand if they got to the place, then had to refuel the generator and turn it back on. Okay. I would totally accept it at that point. But they don't do that.
Right.
It's on. The lights are on before they even get there.
Hmm.
And that thing has been running the entire time. So I can only imagine they're electric.
Oh yeah. Um, hey, these UV lights from my grandma's pot farm work great. I'm just gonna leave them here.
Yeah.
You're going to a place that clearly has infinite power.
Well, infinite power, and this is the only weapon that you've used that has anything. And like he flashed that light at her for like maybe a second,
Right.
and she basically died from it.
Yep.
And oh yeah, just abandon it. Yeah, we'll stick with guns and this fucking wood axe.
Not even good. Not even big guns. Handguns.
Well, yeah, but it's like,
Right.
what are you thinking? Why wouldn't you bring those with you? Yeah, like yeah, they might not be plugged in. The power stopped there, but that's not gonna like eliminate their usefulness.
Correct. Also, her generator was portable. Yeah. His grandma's generator was.
Well,
Yeah. Okay, so when Mark Boone Jr.'s guy lit the flare and dropped it at the box of TNT at his feet, right? It blows up and he's barely scathed outside. I'm sorry, I don't think you can stand an entire box of TNT
Well,
and survive.
the thing, I don't think that was TNT. I think it was just a box of flares.
That exploded like not flares.
I mean, I agree, but if it was TNT, it would have made a hell of a lot bigger explosion than that.
Still though, he still survived that big explosion being literally at his feet just to get killed.
Right. And then like, okay, after all the fucking vampires he killed and shit, right?
Yeah.
And what does he do?
His next part.
Well, he just stomps on his head, kills him immediately. No torture, no like punishment for doing all that. It's like, oh, I'll just put you out of your misery. Like you were trying to kill yourself anyway. Let me help you. Because his big fear was he didn't want to be eaten by them. He didn't want to become one of them. So his reward for killing all of them was he got exactly what he wanted. Like what an idiot.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, if he killed 6 vampires with an explosion that were not on top of it, they're better, more powerful beings than him. That makes zero sense.
Well, I don't think no vampires died in the explosion.
Well, then that was stupid. Then
I mean, one came
uh,
out on fire, but it just like rolled around and went out.
there you go. And then okay, so I'm not sure if this lore is good in the comics, but you have a freshly turned vampire that barely turned, and then you inject yourself with blood, and then you become more powerful than the elder vampire in
Well,
effect.
I mean, yeah, well, one on one, if the guy is arrogant and playing around like he was, and then like he actually did like something that he wasn't expecting,
Right.
like I don't doubt that he could have beaten him like in a one on one type thing. In the comics, it didn't happen that way. It did happen that way. He did do that to try to make a distraction,
Hmm.
but that was when the elder vampires popped up anyway.
Okay.
That's why the rest of them stood down.
So instead of him killing the elder vampire,
Oh, he
he
did.
just okay.
He did, but the rest of them were like they didn't do anything back because the rest of the elder vampires were there.
Right.
So that's why the whole thing's. I mean, it's been a while since I've read it, but it was something like
Well, and I'll just do the spoiler for next thing. If all he did was shove his hand through his face, is that all he did?
well, he reached into his mouth and pulled out his brain stem, is what I think was supposed to be, because the whole back of his head was gone.
Right. Uh, if we would have followed the lore with the sequel, that guy's going to be okay.
Well, yeah, yeah.
Right.
Well, again, this is what I don't understand. Like sometimes they make vampires. I don't know. I don't. Like I said, it's every time you watch a movie with a classic monster, you have to relearn the rules because they always change them.
Yes.
Always, every time, every single time they change some rule in some way to make their story make sense.
Right. Uh, yeah, it's interesting. Like I said, I get kind of sick of that cliche of newly turned person that just gets powers is able to easily defeat someone that's been that creature with powers for a very long time.
That wasn't easy. He got the shit beat out of him.
Well, I'm saying it's a big cliche though.
I mean, yeah, it is, but I'm saying like that's a lot of times that cliche is makes sense in the way of like, oh, you just became a vampire, you think you're stronger than me? Watch me, show off and fucking destroy you and toy with you. And they underestimate it. They
Yeah.
underestimate that they're going to just do anything they can do to win. They're not there to show off, they're not there to fuck around. They're there to kill, and that's again, whatever. There's a lot of reasons why it could work, and I think this one is one of them that could work. Why the rest of the vampires left after that doesn't make sense because they know
It-
that they're leaving witnesses there.
right. And it's not like he's leaving to lead them.
Right, but yeah, what I mean? Like he knows that they're like the rest of those vampires know that there's people left,
Right.
and they're still leaving. I guess there's something that I heard, and because I was stretching so much to try to find good things in the second one, I think I may have explained the mythos for this entire vampire world and how it works.
So you saying it's like respect.
No.
Okay.
I'll get into it.
All right, we'll get into the next one.
Yeah, we'll get into the next one. It's my like. There's not very many high points. It's one of my high points. It'll be
No.
a talking point that I'll talk to. We'll just put a pin in this. That I'll come back to this as to why
Okay.
this doesn't make sense. I agree, but the stupid shit that happens in the second one, if you put logic to it, it does make sense as to why this happened.
Mm.
Yeah, whatever. That's fine.
Those are all my low points.
All right. All right, so this week we're doing ineffective weapons because that's all these people use in these movies. Sometimes it's understandable, sometimes it's not. But yes, ineffective weapons out of 10. So Graveyard, how many ineffective weapons out of 10 would you give? 30 days.
I am torn with this because I liked the movie before I read the comics, you know, and has my appreciation of it gone down since reading them? Yes. Will I turn this off if it happens? Come on, while I leave the room, if the wife turns it on, I will. I will watch it. So I will give it 6.5 ineffective weapons out of 10. How about you?
Um, yeah. Again, it's hard for. Again, it's not a terrible movie by itself, but knowing what it came from and what it could have been
Mm-hmm.
takes significant points away from it. So I'll say 4.25. 4.25 ineffective weapons out of 10.
Oh boy, I can't wait to see what you rate the next one.
Okay, so the next one is 30 Days of Night, Dark Days, which came out in, what was it?
2010.
2010. So take it away.
Yes, it came out in Comic-Con first, apparently, as I'm looking at this. People are traded to this in Comic-Con 2010, and the rest of us had to wait till October for this movie.
Oh no.
I know. I will try my best to recap this as much as I can, because this, like I said, I watched this before, and I think I purged everything from my mind the first time I watched it. Like I said, I'm having a hard time not doing it again.
To be fair, there's not a whole lot to purge, so
No, it's really not. So essentially, we get the recreation of the final scene in the last 30 Days of Night with the new lead that plays the wife, right? Stella. And discount Josh Hartnett and burning to kind of ash. And she's kind of going around. She's selling like tickets or venues or TED Talks about the existence of vampires at night, mind you, too. So why? No idea. She's just kind of like, hey, this happened, like, I think she said like 10 months ago, and I'm just trying to expose the world to it. I'm still grieving that the town was rebuilt, which we'll get into that point right a little bit later. Essentially, so she's doing this talk. She goes, hey, I'm in, she's going to the city of Angel, Los Angeles, and she's in this talk, which I'm going to say, for having no one seemingly know why they're there, listen to her, pretty decent sized crowd. For her talk about what really happened about her book, in Barrow, Alaska. And she's like, by the way, and she warns them, I installed the ultraviolet lights here, so there's any vampires. There's always vampires here at these things. I'm going to turn them on now. And she does. And lo and behold, every person that's wearing sunglasses at night inside the lecture hall is a vampire and turns into...
Yeah, they're all wearing black leather and spikes and some form of like pitch abyssal black clothing.
Yeah.
Again, every single vampire in this movie, like, always dresses in all black.
Yes.
Without exception.
Yes.
It's not even like one character who wears white. Nope. They all wear pure black. Sometimes shiny black, sometimes matte black, but it's all there.
Right. So anyway, as this police recall, she's taken into custody. We meet, a detective who, as she calls him, a bug eater, heavily implying that he's a Renfield. Call it what it is, right?
Right.
That he has to steal their lives, and he's just kind of the lackeys. And for using a term that most people don't like, we're one of them, a familiar for vampires, which is now the common lore for some reason.
Okay.
Right? I mean, what were you in the shadows to start calling that? That's what Renfield called it, was a familiar. Sure. So anyway, essentially is like that cop scene in Blade 1 where he's like, yeah, I'm one of them. Like, shows his lip tattoo that he has, that type of guy. Essentially, she is, going there. She returns to her hotel room. yeah, the guy's like, I'm sick of you. You've been doing this multiple times, which they seem to be wishy-washy of how many times she's done this.
Hmm.
She says it happens every time, which means it's happened more than once. But this is the first time that the FBI is involved. Sure, why not?
Hmm.
Anyway, she goes back to a hotel room, like, oh, my gun's not here, and there's like 3 other people here. Like, yeah, all our loved ones were killed by vampires. We're here to kind of like recruit you. And they get attacked, vampires at the door, and they partially let it in, and they just shoot its head a few times, and it's dead.
Well, to be fair, they didn't stick around long enough to see if it came back.
I mean, the body was still there, and we see it later on. So,
Well, yeah, but it might have just taken some time to rebuild its head.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. I should point out when she was talking to the cop. That's one of working for them. That like, oh, we took those bodies to the incinerator. Cool.
Thanks.
Yeah, we'll go into that low point later. It's like, hey, we're doing this stuff. We have this plan. You got to meet this guy, Dane. She meets him like, oh, he's a vampire. Well, yeah, I got like a little scratch on my arm, and I'm kind of human still. So it's okay. I'm one of the good vampires. Cool. So it's like, well, how do you feed? It's just, let's call it what this is. This movie's a Blade ripoff. Just saying it right now. Blood banks, stuff like that, where he has nice organized, blood containers. Like, hey, we're gonna hunt Lilith. She is the vampire queen that organized this attack in your town in Alaska. So we're just gonna kind of take down. And they go to kind of go attack a nest, and they eventually go to the nest to get more information about where Lilith is, who Lilith, what she does. She is the quintessential vampire queen that bathes in the blood, which was one of the inspirations for Dracula as well. But
Elizabeth Bathory.
Yes. So it's interesting that they have her do that, just as a subtle nod to it. So anyway, they go to a nest, and one of the guys gets attacked and turned, and she's like, one of the hardcore women that was like, I don't want her part of it. She doesn't know how to fight. Just immediately turns into a blithering ball and can't do anything, and cut off the guy's head. And so she just smashes it in with a brick. Oh, he's dead. Okay. So anyway, they wait in the nest for nighttime to happen, because then they'll leave. Sure. Anyway, they come back.
Well, they don't do that on purpose. That's just what happened.
Yeah. Anyway, they capture vampires, like about ready to kill him. Like, no, let's bring out these ultraviolets. We know they work, and start like interrogating him, where they shine on him, and he's able to be like, let's call it light boarding instead of waterboarding.
Right.
And see how quickly he just heals from it. Like, he heals stupidly fast in comparison to the woman in the first one. Hey, this is what's going on here. We're going to have this at, this boat, and we have the stuff. So anyway, as they're prepping, she goes to the main guy that's leading the group of vampire hunters. It's been 10 months. It's been so long. Let's bone. And they do.
Well, I mean, it's a proven fact that when you're exposed to violence and terrible, horrible things that happen, like, your libido does go up. So that's
So anyway, we see the agent talking to Lilith. She's like, "Prove to me you want to be one of us," because he's dying of the cholera or something. The coughing disease. He bleeds into the handkerchief.
I mean, lung cancer? I don't know why you went to cholera. What is this,
I don't know.
1840?
Hey, they're old vampires. It's entirely possible.
Lung cancer would be better, yes.
Sure. It's like, prove to me you can do it. So, like, all right, cool. So then he bites the neck off of a person and starts drinking the blood a little bit. It's like, you want to be a vampire, do this, and then I'll turn you. So she does. So that's cool. um. So anyway, they eventually get onto the boat because they're going to do another trip to Alaska for another 30-day feeding frenzy, and taking like the biggest boat that's going to take the longest amount of time to get there. Which, like I said, we'll get to that in low points.
Hmm.
And we're going to stop another Alaska thing. So, all right, cool. So they go on there, they start taking out kind of vampires here and there. I believe the other woman is quickly eaten, like fast too, right? That was in the group. And they're just kind of going through there, like, oh, we got to stop the ship. I don't know what to do. I don't know if this works. Me neither. Smash, smash, smash. Well, that did something. Cuts off power, easily hit open the steam pipes, and the steam goes onto them like it's not even hot. uh so anyway, then the leader of the group, she does happen to get killed, and so she goes into kind of like a one-on-one with Lilith back and forth, but then she hides in her bathtub till Lilith comes up, and then swoop smashes or slices her head off with machete. The other vampires there, like, oh, you killed our leader. Yeah, we're gonna let you go. Cool. So, yeah. Oh, sorry. And one forgotten piece of lore that I forgot to mention that was new lore to this movie was you can just put a couple drops of blood into a completely burnt body and they come back to life. You can do that? And she goes, hey, wait a minute. I'm going to go to Alaska and dig up the clearly not frozen ground that my husband's buried in, bring him to the house, feed him blood. And, well, he comes back to life and bites her. End of movie.
Right.
I'll go in my first thoughts because, like I said, I don't remember this movie. I know I watched it. This is clearly a straight to DVD movie for all the reasons that we'll get into in our low points. I was excited to see how they're going to follow up 30 Days Night, and that's why I watched this. And I watched this, and I think other people did too, and they go, yeah, I guess this franchise is dead. We can't drop blood into its mouth and have it come back. Those were my first thoughts. What about you? I think this is your first time watching this, right?
Yeah. No, this one, it was. I remember I read the Dark Days comics, and none of this was familiar to me. So I don't know if they like followed it at all. I mean, honestly, I don't. I was trying to remember, and I couldn't. It might just be me not remembering. That's totally possible, but none of this seemed familiar to me. And the whole like just premise of this just seemed ridiculous. I don't know. It was just I didn't understand what was happening. I didn't. I was like, what are you doing?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we'll get into that in a minute, but yeah, I was very, very like confused what was happening. So I guess.
Yeah. I'll start with my highlights then. Walt. There you
Oh, wow. I mean, he's been in a lot of stuff, but I guess that's probably still the most famous thing he's been in.
Oh, easily the most famous thing. And kind of the other thing was, when they go onto the ship and they see the bodies hanging there, going through it. I didn't mention that because it's just they go through a body thing because it's trying to be Blade. They actually were collecting the blood. Like, holy shit.
Yeah.
For once,
Shocker.
a vampire movie goes, hey, let's not waste the blood.
Right.
I go, you know what? It's pretty smart. Although she is just bathing in it too, so that's kind of wasteful. Yeah, at least they're collecting it.
Maybe the people were drinking it. Maybe she was selling it like, Gamer Girl bathwater. We're still drinking. We don't know that for sure.
Yeah, that's what I got. How about you?
Okay, so we'll get into the notes that I have that made the first one make sense here in a second. I'll go the first ones first, but
okay.
I like that Lurch guy.
Hmm.
The guy, it was like a big, giant, tall guy that had like the vinyl like trench coat on.
Yeah. Yeah.
He was interesting, even though he didn't do a whole lot. um, the ending was disturbing, like just weird. Like why? I was just like, this is messed up. But I guess that was like interesting enough for me to go, what the hell are you doing? Um, the sex scene was like weirdly graphic, right? Like
Uh,
they had the whole
bottom,
like,
bottom graphic. Yeah.
well, yeah, they didn't show any actual nudity. I'm just saying like they showed like the awkward like insertion shuffle,
Hmm.
which is not normally shown. They showed like the whole like grinding and like body slapping, which they usually don't show. Usually it's just like, a kiss on the neck and then the woman's head arcs back in ecstasy or whatever. Maybe we'll see like a body double's boob getting grabbed or something. You know what I mean? It's something
Right.
like that, but it's not like as weirdly just like up front, like this is just boning. Like that's all it was. It was interesting. I was like, just kind of like, this is odd. This is an interesting thing. Okay, so the one thing that I came up with, now I was this at this point, I was trying to think of something good about this film, and I really couldn't think of anything. It took me a long time to come up with this, but I basically came up with uh, the way that this world works. Okay, is that only some vampires keep their intelligence after they become vampires. Okay, and not all of them are equal either. Some of them get keep some of their intelligence, some of them don't. We get like the character like Dane, right? Who he kept everything. He kept his humanity, his intelligence, his everything, and that is extremely rare. And then we have Lilith, who kept her intelligence for sure, but not necessarily her humanity. I mean, maybe she did, and she just been living for a long time, and it faded away. We don't, whatever. We don't know. But the vast majority of the vampires are just animals, right? They're just purely instinctual and reactionary.
Right.
They only think about food. They don't talk. They're only animals. Now, those animals need those smarter ones to keep them in control, to tell them what to do, right? So that's why they keep saying if we kill Lilith, all the rest of them will fade away. That's what they mean. Without an intelligent vampire, the other ones just act like animals and they can't act as a whole, as a unit. They're not dangerous because then they just run out in the wild.
Hmm.
So that's like if you look at the first movie, right? That was the only guy who talked at all was that leader dude.
Right.
And when Josh Hartnett killed him, that's why they just left. Because without the smart guy to come up with the plan to tell them what to do, they don't know what to do. So they just left.
Hmm.
That's why that made sense finally after watching this one. Again, Lilith keeps them all together. Lilith talks. I think maybe there's like one other lieutenant that she has that kind of talks, and that's the FBI dude, but that's because he just became a vampire, right? Like all the rest of them are just animals. They just hiss and screech and just eat. And that's all they do. The only ones that do anything other than just hiss, screech, and eat are the intelligent ones. And that is in this world, that's how the vampires work. It's kind of like a vampire's dollar sign thing, is where you have a head vampire and then you have like their nest of all like the animals that follow them. Without the leader, the animals don't just die. They just wander off and they just act like animals, Like what does a bear do in the woods? It looks for food and shit. What does a vampire do without a leader? It just, feeds like an animal does. It doesn't have a
Right.
plan. It doesn't have a house. It doesn't know how to make a plan to go to fucking Alaska. You know what I mean? They don't do those kind of plans. They're purely instinctual. They just eat.
Hmm.
So to me, that when I was again, I had to think. long and hard on this. That was once that clicked for me. I was like, okay, that kind of makes the first one a little bit more understandable at the end, and then this one make more sense because they're just animals. So once I got that out of my head that they're all like possess some intelligence. Once I got that out of my head, it made a lot more sense. Um,
Interesting.
yeah, but that's
Hmm.
that's all I got. Do you want to do your low points first? Do you want me to do
Yeah,
mine?
I'll do my low points
Mhm.
first. The CGI blood was atrocious, to say the least. Um, I like it. Just the CGI overall was just bad. Like I said, you talk about the eyes in the first one. Like I said, of all the graphics and the special effects, yeah, the eyes were easily the worst part, but everything else was pretty good. This being a straight to DVD thing, obviously, we see that a lot with it. Um, and speaking of blood, though, the inconsistency of the blood in this movie. Sometimes it runs as like water. Sometimes it looks like grape juice. Sometimes it seems thick and viscous. Or other times where she is bathing in, hid in the bathtub and she comes out, her top half is like slightly brown, not even covered in blood. But when she steps out of the tub, there's just like viscous blood coming from her boots. They showed another upshot of her. Oh, that she's relatively clean for a hidden in a pool of or tub of blood. It's kind of like what we discussed with like Argento and Fulci. Like, is there thick as paint or it's watery as hell?
Yeah, no, there's no blood consistency.
No, not at all. Obviously, as we point out, the screeches, stuff like that. There was, I think, one other vampire that was translating the queen's, Garlock to the cop. So you couldn't understand it, but as soon as you became a vampire, you understood the language, which is interesting.
Yeah, it's like a racial memory thing, I guess.
Yeah. Um, like I said, she's talking about that group, and like people are like, oh, you're going to talk about the existence of vampires. What did you think this talk was about? There's a sign for a book. So clearly she wrote a book about what happened last year in Barrow. Like, oh, vampires aren't real. It's like, well, they're always here. What do you mean always? Like I said, how many times have you done this speech? And vampires keep showing up every single time. And
Well, okay. How ironic would it be for a vampire to go to a talk about how vampires are real?
they wouldn't.
Oh, they of course they would. Do you know? Are
Well,
you aware of hipsters?
yeah,
They go to everything to be ironic about it, right? So you're telling me there's no hipster vampires that wouldn't ironically go to a vampires are real thing, being a real vampire? Of course they would.
yeah. But I mean, like I said, the people were very surprised about what she was talking about at this like seemingly packed event.
Maybe they were like handing out free tickets outside of a bar or something.
Maybe.
Who
Um,
knows?
the okay, the pinpoint from last time, the why the elder vampire is not dead. The changing of the lore. Um, I can throw some blood into this burnt, decayed corpse. Yeah, and
Well,
it comes back.
yeah,
Yeah,
it was funny because they only do it to one vampire, and it's just an excuse for her to try to bring Josh Hartnett back. I guess to try to make a sequel to where they could possibly bring that character back. I don't know.
I don't know. It was inconsistent lore is really a big thing in
Well,
this
yeah,
one.
but yeah, like burnt flesh. I don't care what you say. You can't put blood on ashes and it becomes a person again. It's not possible. Like that's like hard coded in vampire lore. Once you're burnt, you're dead.
Yes, and you don't say like a full body that's movable and positionable, like your dust.
Right. Yeah,
We
it's
should bring some blood into this dust. Well, that is a game changing Lord of Vampires.
see my favorite here's my favorite way to look at it. And I know this is gonna, betray one, how old I am, and two, how much of a dork I am, but um I played Vampire the Masquerade the game back in the 90s.
hmm
They explained this. There is a whole section in the book that explains exactly what happens when you do kill a vampire. And it all depends on how old the vampire is. If the vampire is a relatively new vampire, when you kill them, they're going to look like every other corpse because they haven't been a vampire for very long. So they're just going to look like a dead body. If you kill a vampire that's like 500 years old, what would that body have looked like if you let it sit out for 500 years?
Nothing.
Right. That's exactly what happens. They become fucking dust and they're completely gone. And there's in betweens. You know what I mean? Like, how long does a skeleton last? Right? It's whatever. I'm making up a number. We'll say like a century. Right?
Right.
Like after a century, skeletal remains are completely disintegrated. But before that point, you may kill them and they may turn into a skeleton because that's the state that their body would have been in if they had died at the point they became a vampire.
Right.
I don't know why the movies don't just follow this rule, but always something different has to happen. Every fucking movie, like sometimes they fucking explode, sometimes they just spontaneously erupt into ash. You know, I mean, like it's weird. I don't know, understand, but it's not consistent.
Well, in vampire dollar signs, sometimes they get the sparklers in their tummies.
Right? Yeah, it's like it's bizarre. I don't like. It's always different, and I just don't understand. Like, hey, you know, like this was already explained. Like, there's a book that literally gives you a play by play of how to do this. Just do that. I don't know. As somebody like it's. I like RPGs a lot because they think through a lot of these questions. And you read it and you're like, well, okay, maybe somebody spent a little too much time thinking about this, but it makes sense, right? I get it.
Right.
Anyway, I just don't know why they don't follow that rule. Sorry.
They're like, hey, the Blade series is done by Marvel. Let's just make Blade movies.
Yeah, I mean, that was the thing, right?
Oh yeah, because the vampires that bursted the election, they look like they belong in Blade. Quite honestly,
they all did.
Yeah.
There was no like, they didn't turn that off. It was on the whole movie.
Yeah. All right. So I don't know what this movie's obsession with is. You need to get some blood taken care of you, right? While she's feeding her husband. I understand maybe this was a suicide thing too, but like, hey, slicing my hand didn't work. Let me just go down my entire forearm straight down. You know, down the streets as opposed to across the tracks.
Right. Yeah. Like, I mean, like with a straight razor, that shit was probably like to the bone.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I understand, like, maybe you did want to kill yourself. I get that. But, like, what the hell is that?
That is just, like, stupid.
Yeah.
That is, you know, going down your forearm isn't, I'm going to survive this. You know what I mean? That's how you slit a wrist.
Right.
And just to do that. And my God, like when the guy got his arm sliced open too, like, here, let me just put a towel on one part of it. I understand they're trying to, you know, stop the blood flow, but still, I don't think he's surviving that, regardless of anything else. Like this movie did it a couple times. They're just slicing down the entire forearm. Like that's not like you'll be fine. It bothers me to see something stupid like that, and it's like. And we discussed before, everyone goes, I need to get some blood. Let me just slice my hand open. The thing that moves the most in your hand, it's never going to fucking heal.
Well, yeah, but it's a movie thing. It's like one of those things. Like if you cut somewhere else, you'd be like, what the fuck is this guy doing? Like people don't understand how sometimes normal things that happen in movies are there to help you understand what's going on. You know, if somebody cuts across their palm, you know, they're going to be using their blood for some kind of purpose. Right?
Magic.
Right. It's like some kind of like, you're going to use it to like resurrect something, put it in a potion, you know, whatever it is, you know, give it to somebody to drink, you know, blood brother handshake, whatever it is, you're going to be using that blood for a purpose, right? If you cut yourself in any other place, people are going to be like, what the hell is this guy doing? Right? Because your brain is so used to seeing that if you see something different, it's going to be an oddity, and your brain's not going to like it. You may get used to it, but that initially you're going like, what is this? It's going to weird you out.
Well, they do that. They always put like the dirtiest rag on it too.
Oh yeah. Here, use
Uh,
this rag I washed my chicken with.
all right. Oh, cool. Thanks.
All right, good job.
Yeah, those are the majority of my low points. How about you?
Yeah. So I put this one on here, but then I explained it to myself with my other high point because I had to think about it so much. One is like, why are they always wearing black fucking leather every goddamn time? But then again, smart vampires control the animals, right? She dressed them all up herself. That's why they all look like that, because that's the kind of style that she likes. So she went and got them all clothes and wardrobe and put it on them. It's not like they ever changed their clothes, right? They wear the same thing. Lurch wore the same fucking weird ass, head to toe fucking, turtleneck trench coat or whatever the whole fucking movie. So like
Right.
they don't, again, they're dead, right? So
Yeah.
like they don't sweat. It's not like they'd have to wipe their ass. It's like they wouldn't smell like that. They might smell like old blood, but they wouldn't smell like bo. So like, yeah, you could just dress them up in an outfit and just let them go for months. So I guess I explained that myself as like she dressed them all herself. Now, arguably the biggest name in this movie is Mia Kirshner, right?
Oh yeah.
What is her most defining feature?
Uh.
I'll make it easy for you. It's her eyes. Right? She has really cool, like crystal blue eyes.
Okay.
So they get her in this movie, right? Not only do they
Hmm.
put goofy contacts to cover up her eyes, her best fucking feature, she doesn't get to speak English, right? She's wearing like the worst fake teeth I think I've ever fucking seen. And they make her wear them in every scene. So there's no scene where we get Mia Kirshner like actually being her. She's just like this weird character that is wearing all these fucking prosthetics that make it so she can't talk right and she doesn't even look like herself. It's travesty. And like I would say like they need to be need to be flogged or something because it's bad. Like her voice is messed up, her teeth, her eyes, like it's criminal the way that they did her dirty, as they say. And I was just very like confused. I'm like, why would you do that? Why would you take away all her like cool things? Anyway, so we're gonna talk about how one Dane is like, oh, look at all these vampire hunting weapons I have. Right? He opens up and what is in there?
Oh, lots of hatchets,
Yeah, it's like
semi-automatics.
right. It's like machetes and like commonly found weapons. Like this is America. Like you can find those weapons in like anybody's house, right? Like there's nothing vampire related about these weapons. Like you're a fucking vampire. You know what kills fucking vampires. Why are you giving them these shitty fucking weapons that are used for hunting people? Right?
I went down to the Walmart.
Right. And then these people are like, oh yeah, we took out a nest before. With what? What the fuck did you take the nest out with?
I don't believe they ever did because the other woman breaks like instantly.
Well, no, she doesn't break instantly. She says, we're too far from the light. We didn't have to go this far last time. She's saying this is not our rule. She's probably right because they did fucking die. Like things did go wrong. They did go
Yeah.
too far in. They probably did break all the rules. And she was probably in the right. I mean, again, she panicked. She did, but like it was a trap no matter what. It wouldn't have mattered if she freaked out or not. If they would have followed their rules and not gone that far in, they might have survived. So I don't fault her for that. I mean, she panicked at the wrong time, but they were dead regardless. Well, they were screwed regardless. I guess they didn't all die there. But yeah, so like there are things that you can use to fight vampires. One, he says, oh, the only thing that's really effective is this melee weapon, right? So they have the one melee weapon, even though there was multiple in there.
Hmm.
They only brought one with them, and they gave it to the one woman who has not fought vampires with a weapon before.
Yes.
Right? Genius idea. The rest of them have just plain old guns, and that's it. And like, they're going to take out a nest with what? How are you going to stop vampires that are stronger, faster? You know what I mean? Like better at fighting than you, and you're going to what? Shoot them? You already know that doesn't work. I understand it's like a deterrent. I mean, I think we were talking about this before. Even if you're immune to the bullets, physics of that bullet hitting you are still going to slow you down, make you hesitate, knock you down. Right? You blow out your brain. The brain may grow back, but you know what? Your body is not moving while your brain is not there because nothing
Yeah.
can send it signals to move. I understand vampires are like supernatural, but they still have to use electrical signals of some form or
Oh,
another.
just a couple of drops of blood will heal that right
Yeah,
up.
yeah. But I'm saying like there are things that you can use. I mean, like a fucking flamethrower. They have like all kinds of rounds that are used in for bullets, like incendiary rounds, right? I mean, they have dragon's breath rounds. Have you ever seen those things?
Yeah.
They're like shotgun shells that shoot flames out of the gun. Like these are all again. I'm a dork and I've read
Well,
the Vampire RPG. They talk about all these weapons that you can use to fight vampires with that still hurt them. Because if the sun hurts them, that means fire will hurt them.
I'm pretty sure ultraviolet flashlights exist too.
Right, but that's what I'm saying. They all of their guns had fucking flashlights clipped to them, and none of them were ultraviolet.
Yeah.
Like she had the fucking lamps. They use one lamp for torture,
Yep.
but they didn't use it. Like put a fucking battery on it. Bring it down there. Who gives a shit if it only lasts 5 minutes? That's all you need. It's just inexcusable that they would go into this, quote unquote raid with like no weapons, no preparation, and no fucking like backup in any way. And not only do they do it once, they do it fucking twice. They go into the fucking boat with time to prepare, and they didn't prepare shit. They walked in with the same weapons they had last time, and like, again, trying to expect something different, and they failed. They somehow had to try to tie in the first movie by saying, "Oh, Lilith was the one that orchestrated the whole thing." Okay, like what? Then where the fuck was she? All right. I mean, I guess they did show the oil tanker in the beginning that Ben Foster was walking away from. There was that weird shot that didn't make any sense. I guess I can kind of appreciate that at least they like tried to stay within their own canon, right? And it was like, oh, there was a tanker there that wasn't necessarily supposed to be there. Maybe that's how they got in, and she was just waiting for them on the boat or whatever. They
Mm-hmm.
never went too far into it, but they had to make sure that Lilith was orchestrated the whole thing so that Stella had a reason to fight her, which I thought was pretty stupid. The burnt corpse reviving thing was just fucking stupid. And the other thing that really pissed me off is like Dane was a vampire, right?
Yep.
He gets shot in the head and he is apparently killed
Yes.
because he doesn't come back. Even though there are other people who get shot in their head. Again, there are other people that are burnt to a fucking crisp and come back without issue. But Dane, who gets shot in the eye, is gone from the film.
Yes.
So I was just like, wait, he's gone? He's not coming back? Nope. He just never came back. They just, maybe he did, and they just didn't bother calling him. And he was just like, where is everybody? They just never went back. I don't know. There's so many things that didn't add up in this movie. Okay, I'm done ranting. So we'll go 30 Days of Night, Dark Days. You want me to go first?
Yeah, you go first. Yeah.
Okay. Again, I logic myself into, some interesting points that this film makes. Which did raise it a little bit in my mind. Again, my own canon, I guess, raised the film up. I don't even know if that's what they meant by it, but that's what I wanted to be. So that's what I'm going to do. But I will give this movie 2.5. 2.5 ineffective weapons out of 10. I would have gone lower if I didn't logic myself up.
Yeah, I had that logic score in my head originally, so I'm going to ineffective weapons out of 10 because this movie is it just needs to go away from my mind completely again and never be heard from again. All right, what we got next?
All right, so next is the 2024 film that just came out a couple months ago, right?
Yep.
Abigail. Abigail is it's a fairly simple story, right? It's essentially is we have how many people are there total? There's what, 7 people total? Whatever, it doesn't matter right now. But
Yeah.
there's a bunch of people that get put together as like a kind of dream team of crime. Okay, and these guys are their job. We don't know who any of them are in the beginning. We don't have any names or anything. It's getting kind of like vague, um, kind of caricatures, right?
They're we're just saying what their names are. They're the Rat Pack.
Well, yeah, that's the names that they're given
Yeah.
is the Rat Pack. So we got the kind of ex cop leader, no nonsense guy, um, played by Dan Stevens. We get the kind of dumb muscle guy, played by Kevin Durant. We
Because he
get
plays a muscle
well
guy.
because he's a big dude.
Yeah.
um, we get the ex army medic who's kind of like the doctor of the group, played by what's her name, Michelle
Melissa
Barrera, right?
Melissa
Yeah,
Barrera. Yeah.
I knew it was an M. M Barrera. We get the kind of like wheelman, like young, Fast and the Furious kid, um, played by the late Angus Young, I think
Angus
is
Young.
yeah,
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 Angus Young.
who tragically died already. I mean, the kid he was a kid still.
25.
Yeah, yeah. Tragic. Anyway, but so he was like the wheelman. We have the young girl hacker. She played with Catherine Newton. She's been in a bunch of stuff.
Yep.
Um, we get the ex-marine sniper guy.
Played by a unknown man.
Yeah, I don't know who he is, but he's like an ex-marine sniper guy. That was like his whole thing.
Yeah.
And then I think that's it, right?
For the
The
crew.
team,
Yeah.
right? Okay, and then we have the handler, the kind of leader, head honcho of this group is Lambert, played by Giancarlo Esposito
Yeah.
from everything. I mean, he's been in tons of shit. But so anyway, so their job is they kidnap this little girl from like a mansion, right? Gets a little hairy, but they get her out. They get her in the van. They bring her to this like broken down mansion in the middle of nowhere. They all go in there. Basically, their job is to keep her there, keep her occupied for 24 hours. They're going to be getting ransom from her father, who's whatever. We don't know who the father is at this point, but they have lots of money. So they're going to get $50 million total for her, and they're all going to get a cut of like, I don't know,
7 million.
7 million or whatever. And they say, so your only, Giancarlo Esposito is like, your only job is to keep her here and keep everything under control for 24 hours. We don't expect anybody to come here, but we have to set up a watch. You have to make sure that, if something does happen, you're ready for it, blah, blah, blah. So Marine guy goes up to set up the watch. Giancarlo Esposito leaves and says he'll be back in 24 hours. Kitchen stocked, bars stocked, whatever. All the bedrooms are all set up. You just got to stay here for 24 hours. Make sure she doesn't get away. Make sure nobody attacks you. I don't know what they're supposed to do if somebody attacks them, but that's what they're supposed to watch out.
Be a team. I don't
know.
Right.
Right. So he leaves, and they essentially all start like drinking and partying, except for Joey, but Melissa Barrera, whatever, I can't remember her first name. I'll just call her Joey. So she's like the medic. She's the one that's supposed to check in on the girl. She's the only one that's supposed to check on the girl. So the girl is only supposed to hear her voice, and that's it. So she keeps wearing her mask. She takes the blindfold off of the little girl who's like, I don't know, 12-ish. Like dressed like a ballerina because she was at ballerina practice or something.
Yes.
So essentially, just checking on her health, making sure she's fine, she's okay. It's kind of like vague things are said of like, oh, who, you, my dad is, and she's like, no, I don't want to know, I don't care. I'm just here to make sure that you're okay, but I don't want to know anything more about you. You don't want to know anything more about me. Just leave it at that.
Right, you can't even see my face.
Right. So they go in the other room. They have like a kind of like bet you can't guess who I am type of game. So that's how we kind of get the background of all the guys. Like I said, I already gave the background of all the people, but that's how we get that information. Up until this point, we didn't even have like their names. You know, Esposito gives them their names as he's walking out the door. He just names them after the Rat Pack,
Right.
except for the Marine who makes a joke and he gets called Don Rickles,
Yes.
who Kevin Durant then calls Mister Wrinkles for the rest of the movie,
Yeah.
which is great. But anyway, so um, you know, at this point, they're all kind of talking and wondering, you know, who the dad really is. She kind of alludes to like she says her dad's really powerful, really strong. You know, I'm kind of worried about it the way that this thing is going. Like, this may not be a good idea. We may want to get out. So, ex cop guy goes in. His face is seen by her because he assumes that she still has the blindfold on. But you know, obviously, you know, she didn't. But that was his own fault because the only person that was supposed to talk to her was you know, Joey, right?
Right.
So then he threatens her with the gun. Who's your dad? Find out. Oh, it's this guy Lazar, right? Lazar is like the Kaiser Sose of this world, right? He's the Lord of the Underground that nobody really believes exists because people just die all around him.
And so many stories.
Right. Yeah. Again, he's Kaiser Sose. um, you know who Kaiser Sose is,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? Okay. I think you told me you never saw Usual Suspects before. I'm just making sure.
But no, yes, I definitely know the
Okay.
reference.
All right. So you know, he's like, okay, you know, this is Lazar. We got to get the fuck out of here. This is not even cool. Like, he's like, I'm out, and they're leaving. And then like they all start talking. Well, like, I mean, it's $7 million. We only got to sit here for 24 hours. The damage is already done. You know, like there's not what would you can do? What are we going to do? Go back and give her back and hope they forget about the whole thing? You know, I
Yeah.
mean, like make an anonymous call that like, oh, she's here and we'll just all leave. You know, it's like this. They're gonna track us down. Like again, you know, she's heard enough about us that she could probably pick us out, right? Like she's seen the ex cop's face. She's seen at this point the medic's face. So like, you
Yeah.
know, at least two of them are gonna get it. You know, so they're like they all kind of collectively decide, okay, fine, we'll just stay here for the 24 hours. We'll get the money. So they kind of all, you know, now they're not as in that jovial mood, right? Because they kind of darkened it that this Lazar guy is part of it. So they all kind of like try to separate out, you know, to kind of do their own thing. The younger wheelman dude tries to hit on the young hacker girl. She is just scared and not having it. So he gets like kind of like, you know, upset and like goes into the kitchen to go eat some food. Here's something in the, I don't know, dungeon attached to the kitchen. I don't know what the fuck that room was, but it was attached to
Uh
the kitchen, but
yeah.
it looked like a dungeon with some sports equipment hanging on everything. I don't know what.
Well, and the elevator.
Yeah, well, the elevator was in there, but I don't know what that room was used for. Um, anyway, so he essentially gets attacked and killed and beheaded by something. We don't know what it is.
Yes.
So the girl hears him screaming, the hacker girl. She comes downstairs, sees him sitting at the kitchen table. She goes, "Hey, what's up?" His head flops off.
Yep.
She screams. Everybody collectively comes in and goes, "Oh shit, you know what's going on?" And then this is when we find out that Lazar has like a hitman call. What was the hitman's name?
Oh,
Valdez.
Valdez.
There's
Yeah.
this hitman called Valdez that like his calling card is he rips the heads off of people like an animal. So this is like Valdez. Like either Valdez is in the building or one of us is Valdez.
Right.
And so now they're all like super paranoid and they're all trying to like, you know, who's who's this, you know, the scary person or whatever. So they, you know, all kind of like try to go together again in the same room, but then the girl, you know, the medic goes to check on the Abigail, the girl, because they know her name now. And she's fine. And then she's talking to her and she says, "Oh, the guy came in and threatened me. He works for my dad. He's Valdez," talking about Frank, who is Dan Stevens, the ex cop guy. So now
Right.
she comes out, "Oh, you're the guy, you know, you're the guy that killed every, you know, the people, you're the hitman." And he's like, "What the fuck are you talking about?" And so they're kind of like fighting amongst themselves back and forth. Um, and then they kind of, they don't, bring it to a boil at that point, but they kind of separate off. Don Rickles and um, the medic girl, they decide that they're going to team up and that they're going to somehow take on the rest of them. And then right after that, Don Rickles just gets like torn apart and dies. So
Yes.
she goes downstairs, now convinced that the ex cop has killed both of them, right? Because now her only real ally, the only other military person there, is dead. And so she's like, "Oh, you killed him because he was a threat. Like, we're gonna do, have a fight, blah blah blah." And while they're going to fight everything, they hear like ballerina music upstairs.
Yes.
So they all go upstairs, like, "What the fuck is this?" Because I think there's Joey, Frank, Peter, Sammy. That's it, right?
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, it's just those four are left, and so they go upstairs and they see the little girl is now free from her. Oh no, sorry, they have a scene where they fight her in the bedroom
Yeah.
while they're all arguing amongst themselves as to who is who. She breaks out of the handcuffs and then attacks them all. They get like injured, but they manage to all escape the room. And then they realize, okay, none of us is fucking Valdez. The little girl is Valdez. And then that's when the ballerina thing happens. They go upstairs, they witness her dancing with the corpse of the wheelman kid. And then they all kind of have like a fight. At this point, they do have weapons that they think are going to work against vampires.
Right, because they're figuring out what
Right.
what kills vampires. Like, okay, crosses, stakes, sunlight.
Right. Yeah. So the garlic doesn't work. She just sniffs the garlic and throws it aside. The crucifix doesn't work. She takes the crucifix, puts it in her hand, and stabs
A
Kevin
lot.
Durant
Stabs
in
them
the
a
chest a whole
lot.
bunch of times. And the stakes may work, but they keep trying to stab her with the stake, and she keeps just like stabbing them back with their own stake. So,
Right.
yeah, Frank gets stabbed in the leg with his own stake. Garlic does nothing. Crucifix does nothing. They essentially all retreat out of the room, beat to shit. Right? They're all injured and hurt
Right.
now.
And despite, Kevin Grant, getting stabbed multiple times, he's fine.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't a big crucifix. They're all
Yeah.
surface wounds, but yeah, it's still like not fun having
Yeah.
that happen. So at this point, they kind of figure out, because the house had been put into. I guess I left out. The house had been put into lockdown, so all the windows were like iron sheet closed. The doors are all like gated shut, and they can't break
Right.
through. Blah blah whatever. So they're like, basically at this point, the hacker girl goes, hey, maybe if I find a control room, I can like try to figure out how to open this stuff up. There's got to be a control room somewhere there. If we can't find the control room, maybe we can just find the power. Unplugging the power might reset the system, right? Everybody always says,
Yeah. Yep.
like, you unplug the power, it's just going to stay in whatever state it was when you unplugged the power. I don't know why people think it's going to change, but it's not how
Sure.
things work when you unplug. So anyway, so they go looking around. At this point, I should mention that the hacker girl, did get bit in the fight, and she
Yeah.
was worried about becoming a vampire before this. But she was able to stand in the sunlight, and she didn't burn. Whatever, she thinks she's fine at this point.
Right.
So they team up to where it's Frank and Joey, and then we get Peter and Sammy. They go in opposite directions looking for this power connection stuff. At this point, Abigail takes over the hacker girl's body and uses her like a puppet,
Yes.
and basically kills Peter, Kevin Durant's character, because not expecting the girl to turn into a vampire and attack. So she bites out his throat, and he dies. And then there's this bizarre dance scene to a Danzig song. I like the song. I don't know about the dance scene.
We'll get to that dancing, I promise
Yeah.
you.
So And then, obviously lots of screaming and shit. The other two come running and they're like, what's going on? And of course, she won't turn and face them. And she's like, oh no, he's dead and stuff.
I'm sad.
I'm sad that he's dead. And so they fight a bit there and they kill her. But they realize that she was just a puppet of
Right.
Abigail. So now they're trying to hide. I guess there was the scene where she was like trapped in the cage and whatever. She was
Like
like,
she's trying to bargain with them.
yeah,
I'll
she's trying
let
to
you
borrow with
out.
them. And anyway, so the ex cop had found out that, there's a secret door in the library, which he was looking for and couldn't find.
Right.
But they went back to that room because there was sunlight in that room. So they know that she can't come in there.
Right. And that's where they killed Sammy, was with like the silver tray, like reflecting sunlight, and
Right.
she exploded.
Right. So then the secret door just like randomly opens
Yep.
and they go in this secret door because now it's only Frank and Joey left. They go in this secret room and then that's where the control room is and who's in the control room. But Lambert, Giancarlo Esposito was there the whole time. He does the evil guy thing of like, join me and rule the world together, blah, blah.
We can overthrow them. Yeah.
Right. So the girl says no, and he just starts choking her. And then the ex cop goes, yeah, sure, why not? So he makes him a vampire. He then immediately kills Giancarlo Esposito and then does a villain 180 and just becomes the most evil version of himself, and tries to go after Joey. And then Abigail shows up. They have a big fight, and he thinks he kills Abigail because he like bites her and drinks some of her blood, and she like passes out. So he
Right.
thinks
He
that she's
does
dead.
right. He also does bite Joey
Right.
and wants to use her as a puppet as well.
Well, he tries. He tries
Yeah.
to,
Right.
but then realizes that you don't you learn how to do that over centuries of being vampires. Not something you just do immediately.
You knew
So,
he's not
right.
going to do it. Yeah.
Yeah, so that their fight is there, whatever. So the Abigail is trying to convince Joey, like, hey, we work together, we can kill him, and then I'll let you
Yeah.
go.
Pinky promise.
Right, yeah. So they basically, blah blah, fight, fight, fight. So yeah, they finally stab ex cop. He explodes. And then it looks like that she's gonna follow through on her thing. Like, yeah, thanks. Yeah, you can leave. And then she turns to leave, and then oh no, Daddy Lazar is there. And he goes, oh, you can't leave because I'm going to eat you. And then Abigail goes, no, don't eat him. And he goes, all
Yeah. I've been known by many
right.
names.
Right. And then he goes,
Also, Dracula may be one of
right.
those.
He's like, all right, you can leave. And then she goes and gets in the van and then leaves. And then that's the
Yes.
So obviously this is both of ours first time seeing it. What was your first impression?
Um, this is okay. So I'm gonna talk about one piece that is the first impression I got, and it's also a low point. The trailer gave way too much.
I never saw the trailer. I guess that worked out for me.
She's a vampire in the trailer.
I mean, I knew she was a vampire before going into the movie. The movie is
Right, but
named after her, and the poster of the movie is her covered in blood. Like,
I know, but
obvious.
yeah. It was interesting to see what it was going to be like because there were some, comedic elements into it. Like the trailer made it seem very comedic, more so than what it was. It's still pretty graphic and gory, which is good. It's interesting because I think I told you like it's clearly the dad's clearly Dracula, and there's lots of Easter eggs
No,
hidden
he's
throughout
not. He's
that.
not Dracula. He's Lazar.
Well, the radio silence guy said he's Dracula. So the writers.
Well,
They just
no,
didn't
they
want to say
say
it
they
all.
wanted him to be Dracula, but they didn't. So if his name's not Dracula in the movie, I don't give a shit what anybody says. He's not fucking Dracula.
Right. But I think it's a pretty, I guess I could say, fun vampire movie. Like I said, it didn't take itself too seriously, and I think it worked out for it.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that's the part I like the least. Is like everything up until the ballerina shit
Mm-hmm.
was good. I really liked it up until the point where they like told you
The
that
third act.
Abigail was well, no, up until like the second act. Like I thought the first act was great. When you find out the girl is a vampire, I think it takes a step down, and then like once the fucking like ballerina shit happens, it takes a huge step down because then it becomes all the fights become like weirdly comedic after that. But
Yeah.
before that, it is not comedic. Before
Yeah.
that, it follows like my favorite plot line of like, five characters in search of an exit, right? It's like a bunch of people that don't know each other that get trapped in a room or a place, whatever, for
Mhm.
a period of time, and they have to try to like figure each other out. Who's the bad guy, who's gonna, betray you, who's the traitor, all that kind of stuff. I love that storyline, and that's basically the whole first act is that setting up that storyline. And they did a great job with that. I thought the first act of this film is great. It's fun, it's interesting. It's like the characters are good. And then
Right.
it's like again, it just once it gets to the actual plot of the film, like what it's supposed to be about when the girl gets involved, it just takes this huge step down. The movie becomes worse for it. And I just, yeah, I just was kind of like bummed out that it really didn't matter. Like that whole awesome setup was kind of wasted. I mean, they did use some of it. Don't get me wrong; it did pay off a bit. I'm not saying it didn't
Right.
completely didn't pay off at all. It did pay off a bit. We get some like the later on. I guess the part I didn't really talk about was when she was like hidden in the cage, and we find out like their real names and what they really did. Like that was interesting, right? That was a kind of payoff. I would have wanted to know what the other people that were already dead did. Like what can tell us those stories too. Like I don't care if they're dead. Like tell us those
Right.
stories.
Oh,
Like
he was the driver was X and X and X. Yeah.
all right, yeah, I mean, yeah, whatever. Like tell us the rest of the story. Like it was a fun payoff. I like that part. But like again, all of the goofy ballerina fight shit, all that comedic stuff, I felt like it was very out of place. And I feel like if they didn't put that stuff in, I think it would have been better for it. I think you probably enjoyed it because you like the cheesy kind of stuff, and I don't. So I think that they
Right.
tried to make the horror fans of both sides of that happy, and I end up thinking they ended up somewhere in the middle, but not in a good.
Sure. You want to go to your highlights first?
Sure, sure, sure.
Okay.
Yeah, I love the cast. I thought the cast was great.
Hmm.
I talked about who did who, but I thought they all were fantastic.
Yeah.
Abigail wasn't great, but she wasn't bad.
She
Again,
wasn't. We rag on kid actors
right?
a lot,
Yeah,
and
but
she
she
didn't
wasn't.
do that
Yeah,
bad.
no, she wasn't that bad. She didn't like blow me away or anything, but she was good. I mean, she did her job. I didn't notice it was like glaringly, holy shit, this is bad, which usually happens with child actors. Like she did her job. It was good.
Hmm.
But yeah, all the rest of the characters were just fun. They were interesting. There was again that whole setup. Those characters were great, and I really wish they would have done more with that than just to jump into the goofy comedic ballerina vampire shit. But anyway, I love those characters. I love that setup. I thought that was great. Now later on, when the girl falls into that pool of bodies, right?
Hundreds of bodies.
Hundreds
Yeah.
of bodies. I don't know what liquid was in that pool, but it was like really interesting looking. Did you see it?
Yeah.
It was like really thick, sandy, like glycerin or something. I don't know. The only time I've seen anything similar is that liquid that's like they use it to like put out fires and stuff.
Yeah.
It's like, and you could like put a cell phone in a cup of it and then pull it out and it's fine. Like it doesn't actually soak into stuff, but it's got that weird property where it kind of looks similar to that. It looks like that, but with like sand in it. I
Yeah.
don't know.
It's like if human decomposition and fat's been mixing with like gray water.
Yeah, I guess. And it was just very interesting looking the way that I don't know if it was CGI or not. It just looked interesting the way that it
It might
like
be like kinetic. It might be like kinetic sand.
right, yeah, but it was just the way that it like rolled off of her body and rolled off of like everything that was in that pool. It just looked really interesting. I don't know if it was
Hmm.
CGI. It may have been. I don't know. Whatever. It just looked fun. It looked interesting. I just wanted to know what it was. And then I did like the Danzig song. I thought it was great. I don't the not. I'm not condoning the dance numbers. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying the dance was good. I'm saying the song was good. You don't hear Danzig in movies very often. I appreciate it.
Right.
But yeah, that's all I got. What do you got?
Oh yeah, cast for sure. I think Ed Grantwood did like the best job. I think he leans into that goofy muscular guy pretty damn well.
It must have been really easy for him because he's actually from Quebec.
Yeah,
That's like probably his like real accent. That was
right,
probably nice for him to be able to finally not have to hide it. So
right.
that was fun. But yeah, it seemed like they all were having fun with their characters. Like
Oh
yeah,
yeah,
again, they were all great. I mean, like Dan Stevens played a perfect like dick ex cop.
oh
I mean,
yeah.
they were all like
You
just
don't
great.
you don't expect that from him.
Oh yeah, dude, I think he's great just what everything he's been in.
Yeah, I'm just saying, but you don't expect him to play like that dirty, like dick cop.
Yeah. Well, I mean, towards the end of Legion, he ended up being like that.
Right.
Did you ever watch Legion?
The first season.
Oh well, in the later seasons, because he in the beginning he's like kind of a good guy. At the end of it, he becomes the bad guy.
Oh, because he is in the
Well,
comics.
right, yeah, but it's like that whole arc actually happens in the show.
Yeah. And I did not like Melissa Barrera in Scream 5 and 6.
I agree.
At all.
I agree.
She was fantastic in this.
Right. I was like, wow, like this is this is like I don't know, like I hated her in Scream, and I was like when I heard she wasn't going to be in the next Scream, I'm like, that good. Because I
Right.
didn't want her to be in the next Scream, but like yeah, this being in this movie, it's like, huh. Maybe she isn't that bad. Maybe she just doesn't like Scream and she acts like shit in that movie. I don't know.
Well, it's just funny because it's the same people that made Scream 5
Well,
and 6 that made this movie.
yeah, I don't know. I don't know what the fuck happened, but like overall, I was like, I don't know what happened in Scream, but she was much better in this than she was in both
Yeah.
of those Scream movies. So.
Yeah. The lore, like you said before, we talk about it every time. You have to relearn the lore, and I think they did a great job establishing the lore in this world. They talked about what works and what doesn't work. They say, yeah, crucifixes do nothing, garlic does nothing, all that stuff, right?
Well, yeah, but at
So,
least it wasn't like some exposition of like some old vampire hunter guy telling him what works and what doesn't. It was just trial and error. It was like how you would really do it. Well, fucking try it. I don't know. How else are you gonna check it?
right. Like I said, I knowing that there were Easter eggs and knowing that Abigail is the name of Dracula's daughter, so I immediately thought is going to be Dracula, and they left a whole bunch of hints for it. They had the Swan Lake song, which was in the original Dracula movie. When she was doing her dance routine, there's a lot of portraits and paintings spread throughout there. Some little bit dragon lore-esque stuff in there, so I like that. It was interesting to see a vampire puppet in that way. Like where whatever that the Abigail was doing was being translated to Sammy. There's always been the idea of mind control and stuff like that, but I don't think I've ever seen someone being bitten and then their entire body being able to be controlled like that. So it's an interesting piece of lore.
Yeah, I've seen it to where they can like see through their eyes.
Right.
But I don't think I've seen it to where like they like directly control them. Like
Right.
I see like they sometimes like control their mind, be like this person's an enemy to you, but yeah, not like directly control like a marionette.
Yeah. So that was interesting to see. Now, did I like the dance? No. But I might as well just run the low point. Obviously, the dance. Like, so I had the same problem with this dance that I had with Megan's dance in the Megan movie. That dance was Wednesday Addams from the stupid Netflix Wednesday show. And I understand that Abigail may be watching Wednesday Addams, but that dance annoyed the crap out of me. Just because I know what it's from. And just throwing it in a dance, and then you're just going to fucking date your movie at that point in time.
Well,
you know
I mean,
mean?
I've never seen Wednesday, and I had no idea what it was from. So
Okay.
as long as you don't watch it, and I don't think you
Sure.
care.
Yeah. Kind of. I feel like there were some cliches in here, right? So at least they addressed the idea of Frank when he gets turned into a vampire, him thinking he immediately has the entire power set, and he doesn't. But like that still seems that's still in their mind that he's going to have that type of control as a new vampire. So like I said, it's still a cliche, but at least they addressed it somewhat. Um, I'm not particularly sure, and this I said this comes into the lore, but I'm pretty sure you can't sustain yourself with blood of another vampire.
That's entirely dependent on what world you're in.
Yeah.
Like, well, again, I'll talk about Vampire the Masquerade. In Vampire the Masquerade, that's a thing that happens all the time. It's called diablerie, and because it's all about generations. You know, like obviously, whatever
Hmm.
Cain is number one, and then there's generations that go below that, and each generation loses a little bit of power, right? Because you're further and
Right.
further away from Cain. Now, if a whatever example of like a level 10, you know, a 10th generation vampire, if they bite and consume the entirety of a ninth generation vampire, then they become ninth.
Okay.
So yes, you can feed off of vampire. Vampires can feed off each other. In fact, not only in that book, but also in a lot of other movies, that's how vampires like have sex because they're dead, right? So their like genitals don't necessarily
Right.
work anymore, depending on what world you're in. But like the bite is supposed to cause ecstasy in the victim.
Mm,
Again, this is like traditional Dracula stuff. Like traditional Dracula, when
right.
he bit somebody, it was like it was seduction. It was like a sexual
Yeah.
like we get in 30 Days a Night, they just bite and wrinkle. I'm a shark, right? And it's like it doesn't.
Yeah.
It's totally different. Like you take the ecstasy part out of it, and like this, you know, if that's the case, then yeah, they can bite. It depends on the world, but yeah, you can definitely bite and feed. It's blood. It's just from another vampire.
But I'm not sure. I don't know if I ever heard of a vampire bleeding out to death, though.
A vampire bleeding to death?
Yeah.
Well, sure.
So that's a
I
makes it,
mean, essentially, if you run out of blood, then you can't
yeah.
sustain yourself because you're not really well. Again, this is
The
traditional
blood
things.
the blood is revitalizing the cells inside your body. Yeah.
Well,
Uh,
not even necessarily. It's just the thing that's keeping you alive. That's what I'll talk about that in
yeah.
a second.
Um. And we discussed this off, the podcast too. Frank's turn was completely unnecessary to the entire movie.
I agree. I think that to me it doesn't make sense at that point.
No.
Having gone through what he went through, I think it makes much more sense. I mean, I think he would have probably taken the advantage of becoming a vampire like that. I knew he would take.
Yeah.
Right? Because he knew he was, you know, well, one, he was really injured and shit, and two, he knew that without a vampire to fight against the other vampire, he was probably going to lose.
But he would not have gone after
Right.
Joey.
He would not have gone after. At that point, there's no reason to.
He had multiple opportunities to do it. And every time said, no, you're right. She's pointing the gun and he's like, you know what? Screw this. We got to work together.
Right, but
Regardless
okay,
of anything else.
but he's an asshole ex cop, right? What does an asshole ex cop know about people? And that's fucking leverage. You
Right.
know she has a kid. All you have to do is say, you ever say anything about this to anyone, you ever fucking come back here, your kid's gonna die.
Yep.
Done. Story
Right.
over. She will never ever be a thorn in your side again. She will fucking leave and never say a word to anybody. She didn't know any of those people.
No.
You know, she may have liked some of them, but like she's again, her child would take precedence over that. Again, he knows she's not a fucking threat. And two, she proved herself to be an asset before that. Again, if
Yeah.
he's going to be taking over that Lambert position, he's going to need a team of people to do work for Lazar, right?
Yeah.
She would, again, she was already a part of that team. She was great at it. Why wouldn't he continue working with her? It doesn't make sense for him to give up an asset like that he can easily leverage.
Right. I feel like it was just shoehorned in because we needed a guy to be the big bad.
Yeah. I mean, don't get me wrong. Dan Stevens was great at it. I mean, he played a great mean jerk guy. Right. Perfect. But I'm just saying, like, that didn't make sense to me. Like, at that point, it like totally left the logic zone and just went into like fantasy land.
Yeah.
Up until that point, there was, you know, at least a logical reason why things were happening.
Right. Want to go to your little points then?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, the fucking ballet fight, I did not like. It just the way that they inject that comedy into some of these fights, and then like the serious shit going on in between, and then like when they're fighting the vampire, when it's supposed to be bad, it's like it's like a fucking circus is happening, and it just
Yeah.
I think takes away from it. The one thing I really really did not like is vampires are dead,
Yes.
right? Vampires are well, they call them the undead, right? They're fucking dead. They don't breathe. They don't have a pulse, right? Like how many other movies have they said, "Oh, you're cold because you're a fucking dead body," right? Like all of these fucking things.
Yes, they did check her pulse a few
Right.
times
They checked her like they drugged her, and obviously the drug actually did knock her out, which means she was
somehow.
totally unconscious, which means she was not controlling it, which means she was breathing and had a pulse as a vampire, which doesn't make sense.
Yes.
It's just I don't no other, I guess we'll fucking talk about like Twilight or some YA bullshit where vampires breathe and are normal or whatever. I don't know. You got those dumbass fucking rules. They took away all their fucking weaknesses.
Yeah.
But yeah, they're dead. They don't fucking breathe. That part just pissed me off. It doesn't make any fucking sense. Now there are 2 points in the movie where sun is shining through a window.
Yes.
Uh at that point, why did you not go, "Oh, look, these windows aren't boarded up. Why don't we leave through those windows?"
It's crazy.
Right? I was like, it happened fucking twice. Like, the vampires were getting burned by the light coming in, but they didn't go, "Hey, look, there's the window." No one said that. I was like, just smash the window and go. And yeah, like you said, the Frank twist I thought was completely unnecessary and just took away from the film. Again, at that point, Frank was a smart dude. He
Oh
knows he
yeah.
has leverage against her. She's never going to do anything against him. And not only that, but she would probably continue to work for him.
Yep.
Doesn't make sense. Again, him turning on Lambert totally makes sense. I see him doing that hard.
Yeah, he set them up.
Right. But yeah, I do
Yeah.
not see him turning on her. That doesn't make sense. The whole ending doesn't make sense. I think they could have made a deal with Abigail, like, "Hey, I'll be the new Lambert. She walks again. She's got a kid. Just fucking tell her you ever come back, you ever say anything, the kid gets it.
Yep.
Done. Story over." I don't understand why it went on from that point. It was like it just didn't make sense to me. But that's all I got.
All right.
So, Abigail, how many ineffective weapons out of 10?
It was like I said, I found it to be a decent movie. I will give this 7.5 if ineffective weapons out of 10. How about you?
Yeah, I'll agree with you. 7.5 ineffective weapons out of 10. I get there's a lot going on there. At the beginning of this film is great.
Mm-hmm.
I loved it. I love the beginning of the film up until the very first time they reveal that she is the vampire. That like I said, takes a step down. Once it starts getting comical, it takes a big step down. But up until that point, it's great. And there is some payoff points later on in the film that I think do, match that beginning, that make it fun and interesting and definitely okay to watch again.
Yeah, if they change the ending,
Yeah, maybe
definitely
there's
do
a
it.
director's cut where Frank finds his logical self. I don't know.
Right.
But yeah, that's it. That's all I got. You want to say anything else?
Nope. Take us out.
All right. So next week we are revisiting one of our favorite directors, John Carpenter. We'll be discussing and reviewing some of his lesser known but no less potent films. We'll be hiding with Adrienne Barbeau and Jamie Lee Curtis from Pirate Ghosts in The Fog. We'll be enjoying the company of Ice Cube in Ghosts of Mars, and running in fear from the creepy children in Village of the Damned. Remember, we watch bad movies so you don't have to.
And this has been Graveyard saying, "Have you checked on the children?"
And this is Salem saying, "Long live the new flesh."
Good night.
Night.